right, well, happy Friday, everyone. We are going to come into a back bending practice with an emphasis on containing the horizontal lines of our poses so that we can lift our back bends and make them have more height. So we'll use the strap quite a bit today. And if you were here Monday, we're going to do different work than we did Monday, different pose. We're building up to the full wheel pose, which you may or may not be able to get up completely into, but we're going to kind of build on the building blocks to get us there. So let's begin. It's the 20th. So just take some time to fold your legs in. The dominant cross-legged position is fine. Move the flesh out from underneath your sitting bones. Try to create a descending line from the hip creases to the knees with the thigh bones. And even though the cross-legged position is always going to be asymmetrical, we do our best to make it as balanced as we can. So crossing at the mid shins, trying to rest towards the tops of the feet, even balanced sitting bones from front to back and side to side. And then of course, putting the torso in line over the hips and sitting bones, shoulders above the hips, the skull above the spine. And then take a moment with your hands down to turn your palms forward. A lot of our work today will be on shoulder actions. So taking your fingertips to the floor, your palms facing toward your body, just feeling your upper arms winding from the inner arms towards the outer arms, and the chest as a result lifting and spreading. And then see about maintaining that as you join your hands together in front of your heart, extending your fingertips slightly away from your chest, and closing the eyes, softening the gaze, and just starting to welcome that quiet, perceptive, receptive state. Looking down, softening the brain. Let go of any contraction in the facial skin or in your jaw or in your tongue. Also in the belly, try to surrender any tension from the belly. I'm just attempting here to align our state of mind with where we are physically. So bringing mind into body. And attempting to keep the shoulders and chest as they are as you bow towards your heart. Let your hands move down to your thighs and gently lift the head. Let your eyes come open. Welcome. Okay, so we are going to start from the hero pose to work with the arms and shoulders. So if that pose is not sustainable for you at all, or if it's only sustainable for some amount of time, know that you can either start from an alternate seated position like we were just in, although I'd probably have you change the crossing of your legs if you're going to do that. Otherwise, at any point during your hero pose, feel free to come out and move into a more comfortable seated position. And we will need the strap, so make sure you have your strap handy. You're going to spend a little time just arranging the lower half of your body so that you have all those good alignment points. You're not feeling any sort of rotation in your knees. You're seeing the toes are straight behind the heels. And we're just going to begin by containing the arms a little bit so that we can feel a resulting broadness in the shoulders, which of course sends more height to the chest. So we're going to put a strap around our arms. So you're going to have to create a loop with your strap. And then we'll be bringing the arms into the Urdhva Hastasana position. So upward hand pose. Urdhva is upward, Hasta is hand, Asana is pose. And so the strap should fit you so that your arms are pretty much parallel. And we're going to place the strap to the upper arm side of the elbows. And ideally, it fits behind your head. That does not mean that your head should push forward just to accommodate that. So if you're feeling the head bumping into the strap, if anything, just push your head into your strap. So keeping your head over the spine. And you're gonna have your palms facing each other. Anchor your shoulders into the trunk. So we don't want the shoulders flying up into the fingertips. We want to really plug those long arm bones into the shoulders. And you're extending up through the fingertips, but you're also gently trying to take the thumb side of your hands back. And again, this is without the head pushing forward. And with the outer arms contained, in architecture, they call this abutments. We can't spread outward, so we're able to lift the chest a little bit more. It kind of funnels that energy into the chest. So just notice how it supports your shoulder blades moving into the chest here. I know your arms are probably getting tingly, so we won't hold it too much longer, but I just want you to get a good sense of this. Try to straighten the elbows as best you can. And now gently go ahead and you can take your strap off of you and lower the arms. And then once you're free of your strap, you'll make a fist. I'm sorry, not a fist. You'll interlock your hands behind your back. You can come into your preferred interlocked hand position. We'll do the alternate next. And now we're going to just kind of extend the arms as fully as you can. So you're straightening out the elbows. You're going to try to take both of your hands over to your right side body. And here's that tendency for the elbows to kind of spread outward. So that's that horizontal spreading that we're trying to contain today. So I want you to bring both elbows toward midline. And again, notice how it kind of feeds that lift and rise of your chest. So squeezing the elbows in is going to help us kind of shoot that energy into a more depth in this back bend. Make sure you're not hyperextending your low back. We're just trying to get the thoracic spine in extension. A few more breaths here. And to come out of it, you're going to go back to extending the arms straight behind you and just change out the fingers to the alternate interlock, which means your other pinky is the loose pinky. Make sure you're typed into your finger webbing and start with a fully extended arm, both sides. And then you're going to take your hands over to the left side body. First, just noticing those wide elbows. And then what happens when you contain the elbows in, we feel a nice resulting lift and spread in the chest. And you're just going to hold it here for a few breaths. So meanwhile, we're getting really good mobility in the shoulders, which is a key factor in having back bends that are strong and they're in integrity, they're in good alignment. So just sending a couple breaths into your shoulders. Remember, the flesh of the upper arms is winding from the front armpit around to the back armpit. And you're breathing. Good. And now go ahead and extend the arms straight back behind you. And then you can release your arms. You might shake out your arms or release just to get the blood returning, a little freedom in the arms going. And before we leave hero pose, we're going to come into Garudasana, which is our eagle arm position, a pose we're also going to do standing today. So go ahead and take your arms and just palms up like you're holding a tray. And then you're going to stack your right elbow on top of your left elbow. Yep. And then go ahead and grab your opposite shoulders. We'll start here modified. Lift your elbows. And as you kind of hug the elbows together toward midline, again, there's that resulting spread. This time I tend to feel it more in my upper back, but we're also trying to keep the chest spread. So pinning the elbows together, you'll feel that resulting broadness in the shoulder girdle. And now you're going to keep the elbows crossed as they are, but you're going to release your hands so that you can get your left fingertips to find your right palm, which it might be hard to recognize which hand is which here. It's a little cross wiring for the brain. But once you have that connection, then float the elbows a little higher, but you're still squeezing elbows to midline to funnel that energy into the chest. Keep your skull balanced above your spine. Again, don't pull forward with the skull. That's a tendency that happens. You might close your eyes to keep track of that. And every inhale, we're encouraging the broadness of the upper back. We're encouraging the broadness of the chest. One more inhale. And then exhale, you're going to relax the elbows down, unwrap your arms, take your hands behind you, interlock your fingers, extend the arms completely. Just counteracting that Garudasana eagle pose, just the arms we did. And then we'll try second side. So this time we're going to stack that left elbow on top of the right and start from modified. So just kind of grabbing onto your shoulders, drawing the navel back, keeping your pelvic tilt slightly posterior tilt to balance out this upper body extension we're trying to achieve here. Really squeezing elbows to midline, feeling a spread across the shoulder girdle. And then we'll keep the elbows crossed, but we're going to release the hands from the shoulders. We're going to try to find right hand fingertips touching left palm. And then once you have that, just start to float the elbows up. Keeping the head right over the spine, softening the gaze or closing the eyes. Just 3 more nice, deep in breaths. And after this third one, you can exhale and release the elbows down. Unwrap your arms, go into your alternate interlocked hand position behind your back. Extend the arms behind you. Pull those hands away from your back body. Just counteracting that Garudasana. Good. And now to release the legs from hero pose, we're going to take a plank pose, but I'm going to have you contain the arms again with your strap. So you might want to get the strap ready to go before you get your legs into plank position. The strap will go right above the elbows. And again, we don't want it to be any bigger than it needs to be because we're really trying to keep the wrists in line with the shoulders in this pose. And we want to have a good amount of pressure into that strap. So again, we can feel the containment of the arm bones, which will help give us a broad chest and shoulder region. So once you have your strap on your arms, you can set up your plank position. If you have issues with your wrists or just the strength required of this pose, you can always take plank pose on your knees so that you don't have as much of a load-bearing pose going on. Otherwise, you're going to set up from table pose, extending the legs back one at a time with the toes completely turned under. And I want you to kind of sense when the arms are contained like this, it supports this pose. And this is not a back bending pose, but it's a spinal stabilization pose, which is a precursor to back bending work. So when we have the arms supported like this, it gives us more buoyancy, where otherwise the body fighting gravity might feel oppressed or kind of pushed down to the floor. Hopefully you're feeling a little more buoyancy here and support to stay up in this pose maybe a little bit longer than you normally would. Meanwhile, press out through the heels to make sure you're taking care of your legs post Virasana. So we want those backs of your knees wide open. Still a posterior tilt of the pelvis here. So tailbone toward the floor. Now go ahead and step the knees down. You can remove your strap and take a few moments to quiet down in child's pose. And the arms have been working, so if you want to keep a softer arm or even use your arms as a pillow for your head, you can. The arms have done a lot, so we might need to give them a break. And just let your breaths come and go. And we're going to start to come into a seated pose, which is Gomu Patasana. This is our cow pose. And now we're going to get into more containment, but now in the leg limbs, the knees and the hips. So Gomu Patasana teaches us the actions of the arms, but also the legs start to come into play here. So you'll sit on a blanket and you also want that strap handy. We will use the loop quite a bit, and you don't need to open up your loop just to hold the strap for this pose. So just keep your loop there so you don't have to re-loop it later. So the full position is eventually we have our knees stacked and our heels by our hips, actually under our hips, but that's really deep and we're not going that deep today. So we're going to just kind of work our way into our individual depth with our legs, starting with easy seated pose with your left shin in front of your right. For some of us, this might be where it ends today, where we start the work. So otherwise, you're going to take, if you're going to go deeper, you're going to take your left shin above your right shin. So this is what some schools of yoga call log stacking pose, not a classical pose, just a modified version of Gomu Patasana. And then beyond that, looks like we're probably good, but beyond that, we would work towards stacking the knees and moving the heels in toward the outer hips. And again, this is still modified, so the full pose is a doozy, and we're not focusing on that today. So we're going to take it as far as we are. Vern, if you have space between your left knee and your right ankle, put a blanket there so you don't have floating space. So just fill that little gap in. Okay, so we will come into our Gomu Patasana arms using our strap. And because we have the left leg on top, that means the right arm takes the high position first, just to kind of bring some balance into the pose. So we're going to extend, and Sylvia, it looks like you're floating too. I told you guys I wouldn't pick on you, but I can see you so clearly. So no floating knees. If your knee is floating in space, either put something there like a block or come to a more modified position. So I do have to contact or look up Zoom because my settings are off. I can't see everybody as clearly as specific people. Anyway, we're going to take the strap into the right hand. And we're going to drop our hand down to the dorsal spine region, which sits between the shoulder blades. We notice the elbow pushes out, which means the shoulder moves in, which does not support a good back bend. So we want to reverse that. We want to pull the elbow toward midline. And then we want to feel that kind of outward pushing of the shoulder, which of course is going to give the chest a nice lift. Then we're going to stretch the left arm out and point the thumb down, the palm back. And then try to catch your strap nice and high and close the distance between the hands. And once you have the hands as close as they're going to be, then kind of refine the elbow position again, which are still probably poking out to the side. So you're just going to try to draw left elbow toward midline, right elbow toward midline. That might give you a little room to squeeze or walk those hands together a little closer. And then once you have that kind of sweet spot, resist your hands apart. As we move elbow tips to midline, we're also gently floating both elbow tips back. And as a result of drawing the elbows in, I want you to sense how that is supporting the lift and spread of your chest. So when we contain that horizontal spreading, we create more extension. It's equal and opposite relationship. And of course, this work is going to help you get your arms into good, ready position for one day, someday, maybe today, maybe not, full wheel pose. Okay, just take another moment to make sure you have not fallen into the abdomen and shorten the lumbar. We always want to watch out for that when we're working with opening the chest. If anything, the pelvis tilts back just to counteract that tendency. And we're going to gently release. Start with the arms releasing. And just take your legs out in front of you for Dandasana, just to give your knees a good chance to recover if there was any sort of torque that we did not intend for. Press out through the heels of the ball mounds, the toe pads, and try to stretch the backs of the knees toward the floor. So you're really feeling those strongly engaged quadriceps. Your kneecaps don't wobble around. You're just taking care of your knees post Gomukhasana, cow pose. And then we'll try setting up the legs other side, and you might have different needs. So just start with your most mild, easy seated, right shin in front of left shin. See how that feels. If you feel you could step further, you're gonna just try that stacked position where you have a knee over an ankle and an ankle over a knee. And again, if there's space between, you wanna fill it so that you can really feel a foundation here. We don't want to feel floaty here because then nothing will happen up above. That looks good. Okay, so then we're going to take the strap into the left hand. And sometimes we go into these actions a little bit more in depth, but today we're just going to kind of trust that you know the general idea with your arms in Gomukhasana. Extend the right arm out when you're ready and just kind of catch that strap, start to close the gap between the hands and then go back to the elbows. And if you can draw the elbows a little bit closer into midline, you might be able to close your hands a little bit. Feel how the hands eventually become a little bit of a pressure for the dorsal spine to move in and the chest to lift and spread. Take both elbow tips back. Keep your pelvis gently tilting back so that you have your abdomen kind of engaging toward the back body. The back body stays long. And your shoulders might be internally rotated here. So that's something you want to watch. That's a passive kind of complacent thing that happens. So just remember your arm flesh and see if you can manipulate it. Even imagine it, moving the flesh from the front armpit to the back armpit. Two more breaths. Containing the elbows and just kind of funneling that energy into the chest, bringing that rising action to the chest. Decrease the spreading of the elbows to increase the rising of the chest. Good. Now go ahead and softly release your arms. Go back to extending your legs in front of you. Be right on top of your sitting bones. Coming into Dandasana, just a couple breaths. Wonderful. So we're going to come into a series of variations on bridge pose, which is another great precursor to the full wheel pose. We're going to work with containment of various parts of this pose so that we can really feed that lift to the chest. So we're creating a deeper back bend by putting those abutments, we should say, to certain parts of the limbs. So we're going to start with bridge pose with a block between our feet. So you're going to have nothing else but a block and your mat. You can come down onto your back. And we all have probably different blocks at home. So you might have to kind of Goldilocks it to feel either that you're going to use one end of the block or another. Remember, your heels should line up with your sitting bones. So that can kind of tell you what aspect of the block to work with. So just place a block between your feet. For me, I'm using the narrowest, well, not the narrowest. I'm using my, one of my narrowest settings of my block. We don't want the feet too close together or too wide. So just use that measuring stick of heels to sitting bones, and then the block, whatever dimension fits between your feet to obtain that is perfect. Okay, so just before doing anything else, just give the block a squeeze with your feet. And it also helps us to bring the knees in, which we'll get to later, but it does help the knees stay closer together. We remember in this pose, the knees like to fly out wide, which of course shortens the hips, and which is one of the parts that we're trying to bring the rise to. We want to kind of feed the energy to the hips to move up. So containing the feet and the knees is going to help us do that. So you can just stretch your arms long. You can grab the edges of the mat. We'll get to the arms later for this pose. So just whatever is kind of your most supportive setting for your arms here, you can take that. And then you'll go ahead and start by squeezing the block with the feet. And as you press into your feet, the hips will start to come up. And I just want you to kind of play with the action of bringing the feet toward each other and sensing what that does to the hips. And it might mean that you are engaging that action and letting it go to observe what the hips do. If I engage that action and let it go, I go from hips floating high to hips sagging. So squeeze and lift, let go of the squeezing and feel the sagging. And hopefully you get a little bit of a taste of how the mechanics work here. Squeezing in, lifting the hips, letting it go, and sagging, okay? Once you feel like you've gotten a little taste of that, come down, walk your spine down. And then you're gonna, sometimes I call it cocoa when you use your feet for things. You're gonna cocoa your block up to your knees. We'll get to the knees now. And again, you wanna be conscious of that setting. We want the knees only as wide as our hips. So you're probably gonna be using your narrowest aspect of your block. And once you have the block between your knees, walk your feet in so your heels are as close to your sitting bones as they can be, and make sure your toes are in front of your heels, you're not turning out. And before doing anything else, just squeeze and release your block. Squeeze and release your block. When you squeeze the knees together, hopefully you get that sense of broadness to the hips, very similar to how the shoulder broadens to help you lift the chest. The hips are going to broaden to help you lift the hips. Okay, so go ahead and just squeeze and release. And now get your arms ready. You can either grab the mat again or just have your hands flat on the floor pressing down, whatever feels a little bit more powerful in your body. And on an exhale, squeezing that block, lift your hips. Step into your feet as well. Don't forget about the action of your feet being contained. See if you can do it without the block there. Keep squeezing the knees in. Try not to overuse the buttocks here. And then let go of the action of knee squeezing and just see what happens with your hips. There's probably a little deflation, a little bit of sag. So squeeze and release enough times that you just get that idea. You get it imprinted in your body. All this yoga that we do is experiential. We can talk about it all day, but until we do it, we tend to forget. Until the body gets that imprint, we tend to forget these ideas. We're putting these theories into practice. Squeeze and release, and do it one more time. And then walk your spine down. And let's take the let's take the block to the side. Walk your feet out. Let's give ourselves a little palate cleanser of a twist. You're going to windshield wiper your legs, hands on your belly, feet are wide. Your knees are going to float to the right, your head rolls to the left, and then the knees will float to the left and the head to the right. And don't go too fast. Remember, we're trying to quiet the nervous system after all these very energizing back bends. And just be nice and easy here, wringing out the spine. And then you can bring your knees back to center, your head back to center. And we'll work with our wrists now with the strap. So we will be placing our hands into that strap, and you do want to make sure your sizing is correct. So once you have your strap around your wrist, you can just kind of hold your arms up, and we want to see that the wrists align with the shoulders. Don't look at the elbows, because a lot of us have what's called a carrying angle, where the arm takes on an angle at the elbow. So look at the wrist relationship to the shoulder. That should be pretty much level with each other. But of course, now we're going to be running that strap under the buttock line. So you're going to take your strap under the buttock line on the floor. Your arms are on the floor, and you want to position your arms so that your palms face up. Once you have that measured width of your strap, you can place it under the buttock line. So here we tend to feel the thumbs are higher than the pinkies. So the first job is really to kind of lift the arms enough that you can raise the inner forearm, and you can descend the outer upper arm. So we get the hands level on the floor. And just feel as you press your wrists into your strap, we have these contained wrists, which as a result help the shoulder girdle broaden. So on an exhale, you can lift your hips again and just really use that strap in a way you're pressing your wrists into the strap, you're containing them. And we get that rise to the chest. And then just kind of shrink the wrist back from the strap and see what it does. Hopefully you notice the chest kind of sags and sinks and deflates. So these actions, just kind of learning how they contribute to not only a deeper back bend, but a better experience in your back bend. Okay, so that's a good long hold. You can release your strap, walk your spine down. And last but not least, we're going to just kind of move up the arm. And this is kind of getting into the work we do. We did more in studio and we had in-person classes, but we did some shoulder stands. We don't do them at home anymore just because I really don't feel comfortable not being able to work directly with you that way. But we're going to place the strap now above the elbows. So it's a little awkward to get it there, but once you have it above the elbows, but under your body, so Vern, you guys are gonna have to do that from underneath. Then we'll see what we can do with this. So first step is just getting that strap above the elbows, but your strap is running behind your back, under your back. Make sure your feet are still where they go. So walk the heels in toward the sitting bones. Make sure your toes are pointing forward. And then on an exhale, lift your hips. And you can just stand your forearms up vertically. So you can just have floating hands, but you're standing your forearms up vertically. You're anchoring into the upper arms, which is a deep action of our shoulder stand work. Your chest and chin are coming together. And without that containment, so you can kind of shrink back from the strap and just feel what the result is. You might feel a little less shoulder support, and in shoulder stand, shoulder support is really the primary action. So just lifting a few more breaths, using that strap right above the elbows, feeling how it supports the shoulders being broad on the floor, the chest to lift and spread. Good. Now you can remove your strap before coming down. Remove your strap so you don't get caught and trapped. And now we'll just counter, we'll do a little palate cleanser with a reclining child's pose. So feel free to either grab your thighs from behind or your shins from the fronts. And just drawing the thighs a little closer to the chest, tilting the chin gently toward the chest. And I kind of like to hold out my outer thighs or my outer knees so that I feel that broadness to my lower back and my hips. It's very soothing to kind of contain the knees in a little bit. Wonderful. Now step your feet down and go back to your windshield wipers just to make sure we're kind of fully refreshing. Make sure the feet are wider than the hip width. Go slowly. And we will do a couple of standing poses, so you can roll to your side. Make sure I have my camera. I have a head, that's always good. So we're gonna do a crescent pose. We've done this many times with the wall. We're gonna do it without the wall, but with the strap around the arms like we did earlier when we were seated, the Urdhva Hastasana arms. So just our straight up arms. And again, the strap is gonna go right above the elbows, the upper arm side of the elbows, and ideally runs behind your head. So if that doesn't work for you, I didn't say this the first pass, but if it doesn't work to have it behind your head, just take the strap to the forearm side of the elbow so that you can clear the space for the head. So now step into your back bending stance, which means your toes are in front of your heels. So look at your feet, make sure you have, yep, good. And your feet are at least as wide as your hips. You can be a little more generous with that, especially when you're kind of working on developing your back bend to have more alignment. Feel free to take a little bit of a wider stance. And now we're going to extend up through the arms. But we have the arms contained, which means we can start to broaden the shoulders, lift the chest, tilt the pelvis back. You might even press, if you do have the strap behind your head, you might use that to press your head back because we know the head likes to fly forward here. And just see if you can feel the containment of the arms really supporting that scaffolding of the shoulder blades, sending nice support to the front body to lift and spread. Good. Hopefully you felt some support there. Inhale, lift yourself up and out of it. And go ahead and pull that strap off your arms. And if you feel like your arms are tingly, that's normal, but take a moment to shake the blood flow back into the arms so you feel it completely. Okay, so Garudasana, we did just the seated upper body position. We're going to do the full eagle pose now, but I'm going to have you keep one foot on the floor. So we're going to start by setting up the legs, preparing the legs. We're going to step the left foot to the outer side of the right foot. You're going to keep the left heel lifted. And so this is a pose where we're moving almost everything to midline so that we can really funnel that lift and spread to the chest. So we have a lot of power in this pose. We're going to feed it to the chest and feel what that does for us. The reason we're not lifting the legs is because I don't want to emphasize the balancing aspect of this pose so much today. Even here, you might feel a little tippy, so just work with what you have. You might even, well, we're not going to use a chair because we're going to use the arms, so forget the chair idea. So squeeze your legs to midline. Sometimes I think about holding a little coin between my inner thighs. Holding that coin means you have to squeeze, otherwise it's going to drop on the floor. Containing the hips. Good. Take your arms out in front of you. We have left leg in front of right, which means we're going to have right arm underneath left arm. So go into your crossed elbow position, and then right fingers find left palm. You can do modified arms if you need to, like we did before, grabbing your shoulders. And as you squeeze everything to midline, accept the shoulders. They're broadening and expanding so that we can shoot that chest forward. We can lift that chest. Think about the chest as the peak of the back bend. You get a little back bend in the thoracic spine here. Good. And you're going to step out to your left. So unwrap all your limbs, step out to your left. 5-pointed star, I always like to place right after Garudasana just because it's like again, it's like a palate cleanser. So we just had all that energy moving toward the midline of the body. And now you're just kind of streaming it softly back out through 5 points. And then go ahead and relax the arms down, step the feet almost together, but you're gonna go back to your hip distance position. Just closing your eyes for a moment. And then go ahead and step the feet together so that you can cross your right foot to the outside of your left foot. Squeezing toward midline with the legs. Lots of squeezing between the thighs. You should feel good contact there. Good. And because we have right leg on top, that means left arm's going to go underneath. So you can cross your elbows and then go ahead and take left fingers to right palm. Hugging your legs together, squeezing your elbows together. And with all those, the next 5 in breaths, just feeding that to the rise and lift of the chest. So we contain that outward spreading with most of the body so that we can feed it to the back bend happening in the upper back. And then your next in breath, you're just going to unwrap your limbs and step out to the right. Sometimes I play with a slow blink here or even closed eyes, but I can not worry about my balance. Just streaming the energy back out through the fingertips, the crown, the feet. And then gently release the arms down. Bring your feet to your mountain position. Just standing quietly for a couple breaths. Okay. Good work. So we're going to come into a couple prone positions to do bow pose. So the pose we're heading towards is upward bow pose on our backs, Urdhva Dhanurasana, but we're going to just do Dhanurasana right now. And we're going to do it 2 ways. So the first way is to have a block. Again, you're going to have to play with your setting. A block between your knees. You can put a pad down for the hips and pelvis if you need a little bit of a blanket there. Feel free to put something down, but we're going to have the block between the knees. So this version of bow that we're doing is going to be with our limbs extended, arms forward, legs back. So we're not going to be bending the knees or elbows for this one. It's tricky to do that with the block version. But this is going to help us contain the knees, again, to feel the broadness that we need to happen across the sacral band to help us get our hips down into the floor. So you have to think about this back bend as an inverted back bend. So we're trying to create, we're trying to move into the floor with the center body. Okay, so arms are going to be in front of you. You're on your pinky sides of your hands, your palms are facing, just like your Urdhva Hastasana arms. Plug the shoulders into the torso. Don't let the shoulders fly into the fingertips. This will help your chest stay forward. And then you're just going to start by squeezing the block a little bit with your inner knees. And on an exhale, just pick up the legs and the arms slightly. Doesn't have to be a lot. And keep the knees moving toward the block, into the block. And again, you're going to play with a little pressure and release to just see what it does to that feeling of power in the center body. I certainly feel a lot less powerful when my knees aren't squeezing into the block. So I just want you to kind of press and release a few times, enough times that you get that sense. And then when you need to, you can rest your limbs, cross your arms, create a little pillow with your arms, bend your knees, and just let the legs float back and forth. If that block's in your way, you can move it because we're done with it. So the next version we're gonna do, we're gonna take our loop and we're gonna make it a lot smaller so that we can hold our ankles with it. And I sometimes get a Charlie horse when I attempt to get into things like this. My hamstrings get Charlie horsed. So however you can get your loop around both of your feet, which means you might be transitioning onto your side to do it like I'm doing. However you want to get that belt around your ankles, you're going to do that. And then you're left with this one tail, which we're going to use in our hands. Spend a little time just putting that loop around your ankles. And once you have it, you'll be back on your front side. You're going to have the tail in your hands. But then I'm going to talk at you for a moment. So the thing I want you to remember here is we no longer have the block between the knees, but you're going to still try to keep your knees squeezing together because they're really going to fight this strap and they're going to want to go wide. So you're going to have to proactively keep the knees contained to keep us really powerful across the hip line and broad across the hip line. So once you have this, you can just kind of start to prepare for the eventual lifting up. By taking your strap in your hands, you're going to stack your fists one over the other. You're not bending your limbs a lot just yet. You're going to have your strap in your hands. Your fists are kind of stacked one above the other on the strap. You can begin to bend your knees, and then you might have to walk out some of that slack in your strap. And right away, you notice the knees and the elbows are flying out. They're getting nice. They're getting super wide and oozing and spreading, which we know is going to kill the back bend. So that we don't kill the back bend, squeeze your knees together. The feet are, we don't have to worry about, the strap is doing that. Squeeze your elbows together and use that containment to lift and spread your chest. Try to look forward, pull on that strap, shoot the knees back, keep the knees contained, elbows together, look up, walk your hands down your strap, push your hips into the floor, broaden the hips. Beautiful. And now we are going to do it one more time. So whatever you need to do to rest here. So you should no longer be in a bow pose. Your knees can stay bent. You can make a little pillow out of your arms or your hands. You can wiggle your legs back and forth to release tension from the lower back. So I saw a few of you facing down. That might mean because you didn't walk your hands back on the strap enough. I really want you to have a looking forward position here as best you can so that you can really help your dorsal spine move in. So squeeze the knees together, the elbows together. We don't want to do this because then we lose the power. Knees and elbows together, I can get way more lift in this back bend, okay? So you're going to bend the knees. Your fists are stacked as far back on that strap, meaning there's the least amount of distance between your hands and your feet. Your knees are only hip distance apart. On an exhale, you're lifting yourself up. You're pulling on that strap. You're shooting the chest forward, squeeze the knees in, elbows in. And release. And again, you can also get that Charlie horse coming out. So you might just slip a foot out, then the other foot. And then go back to windshield wiper legs. Soft, easy breath. All right, you guys, we are on the last kind of leg of this practice. So we're moving on to our backs. We are going to need a block and your strap. You're going to size it so that when it goes around your ankles and you extend your legs, you're going to see your heels are slightly wider than your hips. They are not. So a good way to put this is your inner heel is in alignment with your outer hip. That's the width we're going for. We're not going for super wide. We're not going for parallel. Your inner heel, if you drew a line, aligns with your outer hip, okay? We're going into Shattuch Patasana. So we're going to be using a version of your block. And for these poses, we like to support the spine running with the spine, with the support. So that means you're gonna work with one of your 3 heights of block. Is it 3 or 2? Confusing myself. I think it's 2. You're gonna work with one of those heights. No, there's 3 because you could use the flat one too, sorry. There's 3 heights to work with. It's gonna go on the sacrum and the tailbone. And you're not gonna really know what you need until you come onto your back with your knees bent. Your strap is already there. Don't worry about it yet. We'll extend the legs, the last part of the pose, we extend the legs. So you're on your back, your knees are bent. You're either gonna do your low, your medium, or your high setting of your spine-wise block, the block that runs with the spine. If you're having lower back issues, it's best to turn your block and work with the horizontal spine crossing position, just so you have more support to the sides of the spine. So once you have your setting, I really like the high setting, so I'm going high. You will start with knees bent, and you're going to unfold the arms so your palms are up. Your arms are long at your sides. Remember the feeling of the strap across the wrist, so don't let your wrists widen because you know your shoulders will shrink and your chest will deflate. So contain your wrists without any assistance from a prop. And then from here, begin to extend your legs one at a time. And I want you to extend them in a way that you're feeling good pressure of your outer ankles into your strap. So you're containing the ankles, which gives you that sense of broadness to your hips, which gives you the buoyancy. Okay, so the things touching the floor, the feet, wrists, we want to contain that so that the shoulders and the hips can broaden. You might sense the toes are kind of falling out to the sides. So try to roll your inner thighs down. Imagine your kneecaps pointing straight up and that all 10 toes are also pointing straight up. Wonderful. Begin to softly bend your knees and step the feet in. Lift your hips high enough that you can remove your block from underneath you. And then once you have your hips back down, you can slide your feet out of your strap. Okay, so we're going to start to kind of set up the upward bow position. And I want you to have support underneath the arc of the pose. So basically that's why I had to get all your props, is because you're going to be creative with your props. So you can essentially create the highest amount of cross bolsters. So that's where you make the X shape. So what I'm going to do, I have one bolster and I have 2 blankets. I'm going to roll 2 blankets to kind of imitate one bolster. And then I'm going to place my bolster on top of that. So if you have other props, you might put 2 blocks and a blanket on that first level. And you might do a rolled blanket or a bolster on the top level. But the top level is going to run with the spine. So that means you have that horizontal part of the X shape It's not an X, it's a plus sign. The horizontal part of the plus sign is underneath, and the vertical part of the plus sign is on top. So I'll give you a moment to kind of build that setup. And we will use a strap, but first I'm just going to show you the arms without the strap, just so we can get a feel for it. So take another moment or two, just kind of getting your supports ready. When you have them, you can just kind of sit on it. You're going to sit right in the middle where those props meet, the intersection where the kind of the height, the peak is. And you're going to come down so that the shoulders are down. We don't want floating shoulders. Remember how important the shoulder connection is here. You're going to walk your feet in. So it's very much similar to the setup for bridge poses. So we're going to start kind of tilting back. If you think about like a seesaw, you have your bolster down in the upper body and up in the lower body. It's like a seesaw. You want to feel that kind of support, kind of bringing the shoulders down, okay? And now you're going to take your arms up in the sky, straight up. And then you're going to have your palms facing away from you, so you see the backs of your hands. And you're going to attempt to bring your fingertips to the floor right above the shoulders. Bring your fingertips to the floor right above the shoulders. In your peripheral vision, you can see those elbows are spreading, they're oozing. That's not going to give us a lot of power to lift the chest. So we want to contain the elbows. So without the strap, we're going to use the strap in a moment. Squeeze your elbows in. And just sense what that does for the shoulder girdle and the support of the chest. Okay, so now we're going to really play into that. We're going to bring our strap to our arms. You're going to size that strap up. It's going right above the elbows. And my tip is try not to end up with the rings on your forehead because it doesn't feel good. But you'll probably have a little touching of your strap to your head. So I'm going back in just to tighten my strap a little bit because I'm still seeing the wide elbows and I definitely want to have my elbows in line with my shoulders. Okay, so you're placing your strap right above your elbows. And then you're going to go back to your position where your fingertips are right above your shoulders and your hands are as fully anchored to the floor as you can get them. Sometimes we have some work to do to get the heels of the hands down. So if we were going to spend more time in this pose, I would have you prop the heels of your hands to get that anchoring. But I'm really we're trying to talk about the elbows today more than the heels of the hands. Okay, so use your strap to contain the elbows, to keep your shoulders broad, walk your feet in, and with any amount of effort, exhale and see about pressing into your hands and lifting your hips. You may or may not come up, but what's important is that you have the wise actions on board to one day, someday, be able to do that. Okay, so come down, rest. We will give it one more shot before we call it a day. Okay, so second attempt when you're ready. Strap's already ready to go. You're going to get your fingertips right above the shoulders, the heels of the hands toward the floor, into the floor. Feet walking in. Remember, the knees are going to pull in. On an exhale, pressing into the feet and into the hands, lift your hips. And then resting. Nice work, everybody. Sliding toward your head side. Once you have your, we kind of want to leave the tailbone elevated. So once you just have the tailbone elevated, You can cross your legs and rest. So we're putting our lower back in a more neutralizing position. So the props in Iyengar yoga work a lot like corrective lenses. The idea being that we use them to strengthen, not as crutches. So we use them to strengthen our bodies until we no longer need them. And sometimes you'll always need them, but it's not to just rely on them. It's to help us strengthen ourselves. And I'll go ahead and start to transition off of those props. And you're gonna pick any other movements you need. I've gone over time. I'm so sorry I overplanned this class, but I do want to make sure we have some time to be quiet in Shavasana. So you're going to take a moment to set yourself up and make sure to take any additional movements you need, maybe another forward bend, maybe a little twisting action or something else. And I'll let you guys finish your Shavasana on your own. So I'll just bring you in. I don't want you to feel rushed in Shavasana. And once you're on your back, just take a moment to place the limbs in a spacious way. Once you place the body, and just start that process of deliberate surrender. So just kind of scanning the body from your head to your feet. And just letting everything go off duty. See if you can sense the weight of the body meeting the floor. Paying special attention to your face, the sense organs on the face, the tissue that surrounds the sense organs. Just let your breath be your guide. And namaste.